Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Happy Sunday. It's been another busy hobby weekend. Two shows in 2 days, two very different shows in 2 days. And usually at this point, I'd be like telling you how tired I am, but I am fired up today. What a weekend it's been for me. I ended up pulling two downtowns this weekend. I'll share with you later. I bought a massive Caitlin Clark card. Just been a great weekend all around in the hobby. Lots to share with you today. But I'm driving home from today's show. It's like 55 degrees out, and I'm realizing the weather is starting to get nicer here in Connecticut, and wondering, you know, when the weather does get warmer, are these shows going to start to slow down? Because since around Thanksgiving time, these shows have had the feel of 2021. Just people coming all day long, right? Coming to the show, just being busy, never really having a time to just sit and, take a break almost, not even be able to go out and leave your table to go looking around at other tables without saying to somebody, hey, watch my stuff. I'll be back in like 2 minutes. I go in the bathroom or run to my car or whatever. Right. So it's definitely, because there was a time before Thanksgiving and like probably last summer and even in the spring last year, where I was setting up at shows where there were a lot of times to be just sitting and waiting for people to come, talking with the neighbors set up next to you, going out and looking at the people's stuff. Since Thanksgiving, these shows have just been constant, very, very busy, lots of foot traffic. And after 2021, right, things kind of dropped off. But we never thought it was going to happen, right? We figured this is the new hobby. This is the way it's going to be. Shows are going to be busy like this all the time. And there was just a steady decline until it did drop off. And we didn't see it until after we looked back and said, oh, we should have saw that coming. For whatever reason, the things that were happening in the hobby, a lot of people came in, some people were getting out, new people were coming in, right? A lot of things were happening in the hobby. We didn't think it was going to happen, and then it did. But then when we looked back, we just thought it was just going to keep going that way. And as excited as people are right now that the shows are super busy, there's some of us, right, that have watched this happen, watch the ramp up, watch it come down, watch it come back up again. A lot of people, we lost some people over the last year. I would say maybe not lost them out of the hobby, but just lost some dealers that said, hey, I'm done with setting up and things like that. Now, all of a sudden you start seeing them. I talked to somebody today who was putting cards out and says, oh, I haven't set up in 8 months. I didn't even price my cards yet. I'm like, well, where you been for 8 months? And it was somebody I used to see at shows, but they just decided things were slow and they were just going to take some time off. But we can always look back and see why it went up or down, right? It's easy from the future to look back to the past to see why it happened. But we never see it in the moment or we don't see it coming. We looked at the seasons of the sports too, which was big, right? With football and basketball and baseball, and even in the marketing part of it with PSA, with grading and that, right? All of a sudden, baseball's coming. We're going to give you a special. Football season's coming. We're going to give you a special now, right? You don't even see that anymore because I really don't think the hobby knows the seasons anymore. I think every season is just a 12 months a year, regardless if it's happening or not, right? Regardless, and I'll just give you for instance, I mean, WNBA, Caitlin Clark, right? I mean, they've been out now for how long? And her cards are seeing no decline whatsoever, right? Other WNBA players, yes, but I just don't think there were any as big as her, right, to begin with. Um, Baseball, all of a sudden this weekend, I'm starting to see everybody bring out baseball. So more baseball this weekend than I've seen in a long time. And I thought to myself, well, I understand that. I understand that because baseball season's coming. People are dusting off those cards and bringing them out. But did they need to do that? Could they have been bringing them out before in the last few months? I mean, I don't know if the price is any different. I mean, I'm not in that lane of baseball, but I don't think the prices were that different from a month ago to today, right? And I don't think they'll be that different moving forward. Certain players, right, call ups and things like that. I mean, certain players are going to pop and their cards are going to go up, but in general, right, the market itself. I think every sport is 12 months a year now. You don't see those ramp ups. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even 4 years ago, December, January, February for me buying football, right? Because it was dropped off. It would just nosedive. And I'm running out there. You can go back and listen to previous episodes, right? And go in previous seasons that time of year. I'm out buying, I'm sharing all these QB PSA 10 pickups that I'm getting at phenomenal prices. I'm excited about it. And I just kept holding them, waiting for the national, right? Waiting for June, July. And then watching that climb start April, May, June until it hits the all-time highs in July and August. Last year, those rise and drops were very minimal, very minimal. It was, what I was buying them for December, January, February, there was small percentage or none of what those cards were selling for again in June, July, and August. So I think the market has become more stable, right, with a lot of these cards. Some people were talking today about, all of a sudden I saw some Mahomes cards come out, and a couple of people said, "Well, I bought this right before the Super Bowl. We figured he was going to three-peat." And I said, "Okay, but did you lose money on the card?" They're like, "Oh, hell no." Right? And no, you didn't. I mean, his market is not going to go down. So even though people were buying Mahomes cards like right before the Super Bowl, thinking, "Oh, they were going to have a big jump up," win or lose, I think those cards are still going to be the same. I don't think we're seeing, those jumps as much anymore. Um, we certainly didn't see it with the Eagles players, right? I mean, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. We didn't see these huge jump in their prices either. So I I mean, I understand we're going to see certain player, like Saquon Barkley, right? I mean, he was coming into the playoffs, he was on a steady rise. So here was a player that people were all in on. They wanted to be in on him. So here's a player where we're going to see a rise in his cards, but they've settled back down now too, right? And where they're where those prices are where they were, in December. Uh, I was playing that game to hold and sell, and yeah, I just said this year I can't do it. It just did not make sense for me last year to buy those cards. So going into this year, had to do something different, right? Um, and here we are, mid March. Uh, we're going to be looking forward to the draft. I'm pretty sure next month. Yeah, the draft is next month. Um, I'm still selling football. My cases are full of football, still buying, still selling, and prices are strong on there. Um, if anything, the only reason the cards are dropping, it's not because of the season, it's because the saturation of the market, the saturation of that card coming out on any particular card. That's why they're dropping. I talked about my play for this year was just to grade a ton of cards, try to be first to market, and be that person that's going to make the most profit on that card. Because regardless of how many times that card sells after I sell it, I'm the one that's going to make the most profit on that card. And it's worked quite well for me so far. I just got a 52 card order back from PSA on Wednesday. 39 of those cards were tens. And this weekend, I sold a good amount of those cards at shows. I have another 112 cards at PSA right now. I'm putting another order together to send out this week. It's a rinse and repeat. I just mentioned I'm the one making the most profit on that card, regardless of how many times it sells. And unless something crazy happens with any player, once that graded card hits the market, it starts to decline. Right? It may rise up a little, right? With the frenzy of it coming out, but then it's going to it just starts to decline. So if you can't, get that card first, get it out to market first and sell it to maximize your profits, your profit margins are going to be very small on those cards. I'm just going to give you a for instance and what I mean by a declining market. So I'm just going to go with the Don Rush Jaden Daniels rookie card, right? PSA 10. I graded a bunch of these cards. I got one here. I'll just flash it up here on YouTube. I graded a bunch of these cards, got them back in January, right before Culture Collision. So this card back in January, the height of the market on this card was $330, sold on eBay. Today, this card is selling for $91. Culture Collision, I was selling them at $275. So there's just a perfect example of getting a card, grading it, getting it out to the market first. When everybody wants to buy that card, right? They're all hot on getting that card, right? It was before Prism dropped. So this was all there was. This was the best card, right? You could own his in a PSA 10. Perfect example. Sell them. And if you remember going back, I thought to myself, I was going to hold one. I'm going to hold one of these. Just I'm going to keep it for myself. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'll just sell. There'll be more. I mean, it's Don Russ, right? How many more am I going to get? If I want one, I could just grade some more. And since then, I've graded. I think I've got 4 more because obviously I have this here. I have 4 more that I've gotten back from PSA that all came back tens. Right. So on a card like that, there's no sense hanging on to one of those cards at all. It's get it first to the market, right? Sell them as fast as you can, right? Just get them out there. And if you're the first one to do it, right? I just said, you're the one that's going to make the most profit. No matter how many times that card sold after that, I think that card has been in a steady decline since I've sold that card. And it's okay if you don't want to grade the cards, if you want to get involved in there, right? Your profit margins are just going to be smaller. They're going to be much smaller on that. And you know what they say, you're selling at a profit, you're never going to lose money, right? But you have to be able to buy the card and hope that in the time that you're buying, or you need to buy that card very well so that you can sell that card and there's a profit for you. If you buy that card and hold that card too long, right? The only thing that's going to happen is you're going to start losing money. You're losing your own money at that point because there's going to be a decline on any of these cards that that we know right this year. What Panini is just printing out, millions of these cards that the market's just being saturated with them right now. But putting the effort into obtaining the card, grading the card, your profit level is going to be much higher than buying the card and trying to flip it. And don't get me wrong, I buy graded cards. I do. I buy the players that I believe in, and I think that a couple of reasons why. Hoping, I'm buying them because I think they have the opportunity to go up at some point. I don't mind holding them for a month or 2 months or 3 months, as long as I know I'm putting a plan together with that, or I'm buying this card. I said, you know what, I'm going to hold this card right now. I'm going to put it in the hold pattern because I believe in a particular right now, Juju Watkins, is one of those players, right? I'm just going to buy those cards and put them. I'm grading them, but some of those cards are so hard to grade, right? They're so hard to grade. I'm sending these cards out. They look beautiful. I'm sending them out, and they're coming back nines, right? So I at some point I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go buy the tens because it's costing me money to try to grade these you know these cards, the Bowman U cards and the McDonald's All American. They're tough grading cards, right? So when somebody shows up or if I see one of those cards that is a 10, I say to myself, okay, if I get 3 or 4 of them and then I grade them, there's $20 each to send them to PSA, right? Am I better off just buying this one and putting it away? And sometimes that is correct, right? Versus opening up Don Russ blasters and pulling out 10 or 20 Jaden Daniels base cards or all the rookies, right? Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, Drake May, all of them, and then going through and sending them all, right? They're not all coming back tens, right? But if I'm sending 5, I'm generally getting 3 or 4 tens and 1 or 2 nines out of it, right? So just continuously doing this. I don't mind putting those nines in my little discount 2-row discount box on the table, because most of the time these whatnot people that are coming up, these are the cards they want to buy. They're happy to buy these cards. They're looking for these cards, right? So, I mean, we're helping each other out. These are my throwaway cards because my graded 10s are covering whatever cost it was to grade those. And now I've got somebody who's interested in buying those cards to take them away. So it's almost a win-win with those cards. So sometimes it just makes sense, right, to buy the card, and other times it makes sense to grade 10 of them or 5 of them, knowing that if the cards are going to grade well, um, and you can look at gem rates and pop counts, and you get an idea of how well the cards are printed, right? That if they, you do have the opportunity to gem these cards. You just have, I guess for me, and for most people, you just have to find your balance, right? What makes sense to you? Because believe me, there is nothing worse than getting a card and shining it up and everything is perfect about it, and you send it off and you're like, man, this is guaranteed. It's going to be a 10, hands down, right? And it comes back a 9, or even worse, an 8 or less, and you're like, oh, how did this happen? Um, but I mean, I know I'm getting better because the more I grade, the higher my gem rate is going up. I was complaining for a while, and I've caught on to a few things that I just think that PSA, when they're looking at these cards, they're grading harder on certain things than others. So I've gotten to a point where sometimes I see something and I'm like, you know what? This is probably, 70-30 or 80-20. And I'm not talking about centering, but just what I'm thinking that it's going to grade, whether it's going to get a 10 or a 9. Right. And when I'm at that, 75-25 is probably my cut right there. If I'm below that, that I'm thinking that it's my percentages are dropping less than that card will gem from maybe a little dot or a little slightly off center or something on the card, then I'm just like, you know what? No, I'm not going to send that. And then even the ones I do send, that's why I probably get that percentage that are coming back 9s, because I said, you know what, I'm going to take a shot on that one. And then some of them work out, some of them don't. And some of them I sent and they've come back and I cracked it, sent them right back, and then they've come back a 10 because I said, there's nothing wrong with this card. There's no reason why this card should not be a 10, except for I sent 3 of them together and 2 came back a 10 and 1 came back a 9, but they all looked great, right? So this time I'm sending that card by itself, and maybe there's nothing to compare it to. This is my thought pattern. They have nothing to compare it to, so they're saying, okay, now it's a 10 because we're not comparing it to those other 2 that were there. My next order to PSA will really be the tail of the tape when it comes to the Prism football. Uh, I had an order that I sent out. It was a 42 card order. It was initially only 22 cards for that order. But after hearing a lot of people talk about Prism and the gem rate's going to be so low and the nines are going to hold their value, I said, okay, I've got these 20 that I rejected the first time that I'm pulled back out. I put them in and I added them to the order. And this is kind of give me a little barometer of this year's Prism football and the timing too, right? Hopefully to get those back really soon. Again, try to be the first to the market with some, PSA 10 prisms or, the nines to see what happens with those. So when that order comes back, it's going to give me a better idea, one, about how they're going to grade those cards, and two, how the market is going to treat the tens and the nines on that card. So this weekend two shows, two very different shows. Saturday was the Titan show in Yorktown Heights, New York. A little backstory. I went to this show 2 shows ago, and it wasn't a very good show at all. So the last time the show came around, I politely declined. I'm all set. And the people that I went to the setup the first time had gone to the last show, and they came back. Oh my God, what an amazing show! It was just an unbelievable. It was a great buying show, and so the room was packed. And I know, right? Since I just talked about since Thanksgiving, these shows have just been packed. So I said, okay. The show came back around. I said, okay, I'm in. I'll take a table. And to me, it was probably, I would describe it as a middle of the road show. And in their defense, and most people's, promoters' defense of any show, I find the weekend that there's a Dallas show or a show in Chicago or the Burbank show, these really big regional shows, I find these smaller shows are affected. Not affected by foot traffic, right? Not affected by the people walking around, because even though the foot traffic is the same at most of these shows, the sales are lower, because I think the bigger buyers, the repackers, the people coming in and buying out people's cases, they're not at these shows this time. They're at the big show, the regional show, wherever it is, the Dallas, the Chicago, the Burbanks. They're at those shows. And I know people are going to argue with me, but the difference when you show up at one of these shows and you see, like M&TCards or a couple of these other guys that are showing up with their suitcase and a pile of cash, and they're just wiping out people's cases. That changes the show. That changes a dealer's thought about the show. If somebody shows up and is buying 10, 12, 15 cards, all of a sudden you're like, wow, it was a great show. Look at all the sales I had. But when these people aren't going table to table, buying up, inventory, it's a little different, because now you're just dealing with the local people that are coming in, right? And you're not dealing with big buyers that are coming in. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. I mean, the show is still great, but when it comes to the amount of sales and the amount of money that's being spent in the room, it's much different when there's these bigger regional shows going on. Since I was at the show last time, they added an additional row of tables and sold them out. And my first worry when I got there was, like most dealers, is I hope there's not going to be more dealers than attendees in the room, because that room was packed. And if attendees did show up, is there going to be enough room in the aisles for people to go by? Because I know in the morning, just setting up, you couldn't, with people standing in the row, putting their cards in their cases, you could hardly get up the row. So I was a little nervous about that too. It ended up working out fine. The show had a steady stream of foot traffic all day. The show was a 9 to 3, started at 9, went to 3 o'clock. Most of my sales in the morning, up until about 1 o'clock, 1:30, were all from my singles boxes. I sold no cards out of my cases. Although I negotiated with a lot of people with cards in my cases, a number of them came early, made some really low offers, and I'm like, "Look, this is my best price on this card." And they said, "Okay, too much," and they left. Then they would come back like an hour later, and they would up their their offer $10. Now they still know what my best price is because I'd already give it to them, but now they're creeping up. They're $10 up uh, on a card. No, no, I'm still firm at that. Then they would laugh, come back an hour later, add $10 more to their end. Like, look, you know what my price is. I'm not going any lower on that card. There's no need for me to sell that card for anything less. And you can see where this is going, right? So between 2 and 3 o'clock, I ended up selling the most amount of cards out of my cases to the same people that I've been negotiating with all day. And yes, they were other dealers in the room. Um, as far as my buying station, um, I came equipped with my nice magnifying glass with the light built in that I've had for a while that I really haven't broken out, but now it's become a staple of me setting up because I just need to be a lot more careful on these raw cards. I've been buying these cards, right, from people saying, "Oh my God, I looked at this card; it's beautiful," right? Everybody's got a story. That I get home and there's massive print lines and scratches and dented corners, and I can only see so much. Even pulling out my phone and stuff. So I'm a lot more prepared now with my station and my magnifying glass and my light, and I'm happy I did because I rejected like 99% of the cards I looked at. Right. In fact, I only ended up buying one card at that show, and it was a very late in the day pickup. I think I bought that card at about 2:45 or 2:50 in the afternoon of a guy who showed up late and just happened to show up at my table first. It was Barry Sanders Explosive. If you're on YouTube, I'm just going to hold that up. A great card, case hit. Happy to get that card. At the end of the show, driving home, a lot of people reached out to me, asking me, "Hey, how was that show? Were you happy you went?" I'm always happy to go to a show. I was happy I went to that show. I will tell you, though, my response to a number of people that was almost a copy and paste was weird day, weird show, right? And for me, I say that because the day felt slow of sales, but I did a lot of sales because they all came very late in the day. I looked through so many cases, so many people's cases. I felt I bought more than one card. I couldn't believe at the end of the day where I'm saying, no, I had to have bought more. No, that was the only card I ended up buying at the end of the day. And at 10 of 3, when I'm hoping to start packing up because I've got a little over an hour drive home, that's when everybody was coming to buy. Right. So it was just kind of a weird day. It was a weird show for me. Talked to a lot of people. The people I went with said, look, the day started out slow, but it was a good show. And I agree with them. I agree with them 100%. It just didn't go like my shows normally go. Right. Weird day, weird show. And going into the weekend, I had this show and I had my regular monthly Sunday show in New Britain. And what I expected on Sunday happened on Saturday, and what I expected Saturday happened on Sunday, right? And Sunday was a lot of steady selling all day and a lot of buying all day. Super busy day. Good for traffic all day. The local New Britain show, it's just a local Sunday show here, a monthly show. It's just great traffic all day. And the best part of this show, it's like 15 minutes from my house, right? Um, I mentioned earlier some people that used to set up at this show, right? One came back, a couple of them were walking the show. And I said, "Oh, where you been? How come you're not set up?" And they said, "I'm just setting up at the big shows now." And I said, I think this is a big show now. I mean, you look around this room. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe they have like 60, 80 tables in the room. Uh, every table is full, right? The room is full. Place was crowded. Um, and they admitted, I think I might have to reach out to the promoter and try to get a table back here, which I think he has a waiting list now, right? I mean, that's just what happens to these shows when they start to get busy. And I think that's what these Connecticut shows have become. I think what used to be, and people used to say, hey, it's a small local show here in Connecticut. Um, Enfield, Plainville, New Britain. They're not small local shows. They're big shows now. I mean, these shows are packed. You go to these shows, they're packed. People are showing up hour early to try to get in the door because they know what it's going to look like here. Um, And then we have, the smaller shows. Some of the shows that can't get any bigger because if they stay where they are, their rooms are only so big. They can't expand out of there, right? Where the Enfield show had upstairs and now there's a downstairs, right? The New Britain show is a show that, could start out with it's a huge room. This is a small number of tables that could really, really expand out. And Plainville, right? You got outside at Plainville, right? As soon as the weather gets nice, they put almost as many dealers outside as inside on a nice day anyways, right? So these shows are growing. The shows that can't grow, the smaller shows, right? The Danbury, the Orange, the Trumbull, unless they move those to a bigger venue, they're always going to be a smaller show, but I mean, they're still great shows, right? And then we have this huge show, right? Mohegan Sun here in Connecticut, another fantastic show comes. Scott, you're going to yell at me. I have to think about this. I know the three times a year for the 2-day show, and last year we had a 1-day show. We had 4 shows last year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. And now we have a new show coming in May to Bristol. So, I mean, shout out to all these people who run these shows, these promoters. And give people like me a place to go every weekend and either set up or just even to walk these shows. A couple of shout out to my guy Joe, JESBE Sports Card Investments, listener of the pod, brought some great women's basketball cards for me to buy today. And I'm just going to share them with you. Juju Watkins, the Bowman U, PSA 10. Juju just signed a huge deal with Topps. For those of you who don't know, it just happened. So she's an exclusive with Topps now. A card that I've never had, and you're gonna laugh and you'll be like, "Come on, Big Ken, are you kidding me?" But I've never had the Bowman, first Bowman, Caitlin Clark, PSA 10. I've bought and sold so many of these cards, but I've never had this one. So I bought this one just to put in my PC. Cameron Brink, Enfuego Flash, PSA 10. Oh, all these cards are PSA 10, by the way. And this is a Cameron Brink Pink and Purple Prism, PSA 10. This one is numbered to 99. Excited to have those cards. Shout out, Joe. Appreciate you thinking of me and bringing these cards down. Shout out to my guy, Military Breaker, who got me some Don Russ mega boxes that I mentioned at the beginning of this. I actually pulled 2 downtowns out of him. I pulled a Puka Nacua downtown and a Josh Allen downtown. Now, I felt my luck had run out, that I couldn't pull downtowns anymore out of all the blasters I've opened up, but now I've pulled 4 out of the mega boxes. So I don't know if these mega boxes are loaded or I'm just more lucky with those than the blasters. And shout out to him. He came down to the New Britain show today and walked it, and he bought He bought a bunch of WNBA Prism that he ripped, and he ended up pulling this nice blue. I think it's I think it's laser. I really haven't looked it up yet, but it's definitely a blue Prism. Um, Caitlin Clark. So I ended up buying this off him before he left. Appreciate that too. I talked about getting a massive card, a massive Caitlin. So I have to find it. Oh, here it is over here. Is it? See, I have so many cards here. Oh, here it is. I have so many cards. I picked up so many cards today. I'm losing cards sitting here. So I went to the Friday night show a few weeks ago in New Britain, and after I left, my guy Rich Whittlebug Cards, he sent me a message with this really nice Caitlin Clark card, and said, "Hey, this guy set up here has this card," and I said I completely missed it. That was a show I went to for an hour, and I had to take off. I had other things going on. So I communicated back and forth. I got some pictures of the card. I said, look, bring the card. I'm set up Sunday. Bring it down. Maybe we can do something. So he came down. So shout out at 4KFLO. It's 2024 Select WNBA Caitlin Clark and Fuego Blue Prism, numbered to 49. It is a PSA 10. And we were able to make a deal, and I purchased this card off of him. Super excited to put this in my PC. Probably one of the more expensive Caitlins that I have right now. So I'm happy to have that. I just got a message from an email from Panini that my Caitlin Clark Prism Draft autographed is being shipped. So there was a redemption that I had. I redeemed, and that's being shipped. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm going to throw this. If you're here this long, I appreciate you being here. Right. When I first jumped into the hobby, I got back into the hobby. I was doing a few things, and I had a few PCs, and I somehow got involved in tennis, and I had a bunch of cards I bought, all PSA 10s, all older cards, all from 2003, the Net Pro stuff. And there was one card I needed to complete what I wanted to complete for that part of the PC. And it was this 2003 Net Pro Glossy Anna Kournikova, the International Preview, the P10. So these cards are numbered to 500. So I'd gotten a couple of those cards. I got one in a PSA 7, and then I upgraded to a PSA 8. And then I sold those both. I bought a raw, and I graded it, thinking it was going to be a 10, and it came back a 9, which is this one here. And that was fine. And of course, on my eBay, we all have our search things. A week and a half or 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks ago or so, all of a sudden it popped up that one of these cards, PSA 10, was for sale, that somebody had listed it for sale. And at the time when I was trying to get this card, a couple of 10s had come up, but they were super expensive, and I just couldn't see putting out a big investment. That I thought, I'll find one of these one day in a 10, because it's the last one I really needed to complete that. And this card popped up, and I watched it on eBay, and I bid, and it was, I ended up getting it for so cheap that it was incredibly cheap. But I was so excited. And if you're in the hobby, you do this, and one of your cards pops up after a long time. And when I say a long time, probably been over 2 years that I haven't seen any of these cards popped up. And this card popped up, and it's a PSA 10, and you could tell by the label. It was just, this card was graded back in 2003, right? Just a great card. I'm going to hold it up, and also the number to 500. So it was one of those cards that I got it, brought a smile to my face. It completed what I wanted to do with that set, that part of the PC, and I can actually kind of close the door on adding to that's done. I've got what I wanted there. So This is probably the first time that I've waited this long to get a card to go in to complete what I wanted. So now I have the ability to sell the 9 whenever. Now that I got a 10, even though I graded the 9, I really wanted the 10. So that's my story. That's my card with the story for this week, right? So that's it. That's all I got for you. I'll be back Thursday with the hobby chop. Be back with the fellows for for a brand new episode Thursday, and I will be back with you next week. I don't believe I am setting up anywhere next week. I guess I probably should have checked that, but you'll hear from me on Thursday. I'll let you know where I'm going to be this week. I'm going to be somewhere. Oh, yes, I am. Friday. Friday is White Plains show. Friday, I'm going down there early. I'm going to meet up with my guy Homer Sports Cards, and we are going to do the early bird on Friday at the White Plains show. So that's where I'll be on Friday. So I'll see you back here Thursday. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe. And most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. Until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you.